I'm in Sydney, Australia right now. So, and it's at night time now here now. So, I think probably this may sound strange, but we went in on a Friday.
They sold over 200 million albums, filled stadiums across the globe, and created some of the most iconic riffs in rock history. But while other bands reinvented themselves with every new decade, AC/DC never changed. Their sound stayed raw, loud, and instantly recognizable. For years, critics mocked them for repeating the same formula. But at 76, Angus Young finally revealed the truth. Why would one of rock's most powerful forces refuse to evolve? And how did that decision make them legends? Angus Young's journey into rock history began in Sydney, Australia. Born in Glasgow, Scotland in 1955, he moved with his family to Australia as a child. His older brothers Malcolm and George were already deeply involved in music, and by the early 1970s, Angus and Malcolm had formed a band that would soon shake the world. AC/DC's early albums like High Voltage in 1975 and Let There Be Rock in 1977 introduced their raw sound, blues-based riffs, pounding rhythms, and lyrics about rebellion, sex, and living loud. Angus, dressed in his trademark schoolboy uniform, became the visual symbol of the band's spirit, mischievous, relentless, and unapologetic. While many of their peers experimented with progressive rock, glam theatrics, or psychedelic sounds, AC/DC doubled down on simplicity. Their formula was direct: a riff, a groove, a chorus that fans could shout at the top of their lungs. By the time Highway to Hell hit the charts in 1979, AC/DC had defined themselves as a band that didn't bend to trends. They created their own. But tragedy struck in 1980, when lead singer Bon Scott died suddenly after a night of heavy drinking. Many assumed the band would collapse. Instead, they regrouped with new frontman Brian Johnson and released Back in Black, a tribute to Scott that became one of the best-selling albums in music history. From the start, Angus and Malcolm's vision was clear. AC/DC didn't need to change. They needed to be louder, tighter, and truer to themselves. As the 1980s and 1990s rolled on, AC/DC faced constant criticism from music journalists. Reviewers accused them of recycling riffs, rewriting the same song over and over, and refusing to innovate. Angus Young famously laughed off these attacks. In one interview, he joked, "I'm sick to death of people saying we've made 11 albums that sound exactly the same. We've actually made 12. The critics saw stagnation, but the fans saw consistency. Every time AC/DC released an album, from For Those About to Rock in 1981 to The Razor's Edge in 1990, audiences knew exactly what they were going to get: thunderous guitars, unforgettable hooks, and songs built for the stage. What critics missed was that this sameness was intentional. Angus and Malcolm believed rock and roll wasn't meant to evolve into something unrecognizable. It was meant to stay true to its core. Their philosophy was that fans didn't want AC/DC to change. They wanted the band to deliver the raw power only they could provide. This decision would prove risky in an industry that prized reinvention. But for AC/DC, staying the same would become their greatest strength. The real test of AC/DC's philosophy came during the turbulent shifts of the music industry in the 1990s. Grunge had exploded, sweeping away many of the hard rock and glam metal acts that dominated the previous decade. Bands like Nirvana and Pearl Jam ushered in a darker, moodier sound, while AC/DC's peers scrambled to adapt. But Angus Young refused to bend. Instead of chasing trends, AC/DC released Ball Breaker in 1995, produced by Rick Rubin. The album sounded like it could have been recorded in 1979. Gritty, riff-driven, unapologetically simple. Critics once again accused the band of being out of step with the times, but the fans stayed loyal. Concerts continued to sell out, proving that their formula still worked, even in the face of a changing landscape. This moment highlighted the turning point. Angus explained years later, "We always knew who we were. We weren't going to suddenly put on flannel shirts and do grunge, because that wasn't us." By standing firm while others shifted, AC/DC carved out a space where their brand of rock never went out of style. Instead of being buried by new waves of music, they became timeless. As the 2000s arrived, the debate around AC/DC's sound intensified. Music journalists doubled down on their claims that the band was stuck in the past. Every review seemed to carry the same critique: another AC/DC record that sounds just like the last one. But while critics complained, the numbers told a different story. The 2008 album Black Ice debuted at #1 in 29 countries, selling millions worldwide. The supporting tour grossed more than $440 million, making it one of the highest-grossing tours in rock history. Clearly, fans weren't tired of the formula. They were celebrating it. For Angus, the backlash from the press only confirmed his philosophy. He argued that consistency was their strength, not their weakness. "People don't come to us for something different," he explained. "They come to us for AC/DC." What had started as a defense of their sound had now escalated into a defining battle between image and legacy. Critics wanted reinvention, but fans wanted the thunder. And Angus Young, at 76, finally made it clear: the fans were the only critics who mattered. The long-term consequences of AC/DC's decision to never change are fascinating. On one side, critics continued to dismiss them as predictable. On the other, AC/DC became one of the most commercially successful rock bands in history. By sticking to their guns, AC/DC built a reputation not for reinvention, but for reliability. Fans knew exactly what they were getting when they bought an album or a concert ticket, and they loved them for it. Songs like Thunderstruck, You Shook Me All Night Long, and Back in Black became eternal staples, played at sports events, in films, and across radio stations worldwide. The fan reaction was overwhelmingly positive. While bands that tried to reinvent themselves often lost their core audiences, AC/DC never did. Their base remained fiercely loyal, spanning multiple generations. Parents who grew up blasting high voltage introduced their kids to rock or bust, creating a cycle of devotion that few bands could match. The press, however, never let up. To this day, AC/DC is often mocked for making the same album over and over, but the public's reaction tells a different story. Albums like Black Ice and Power Up, released decades after their peak, still topped charts, proving that consistency had cemented their legacy. At 76, Angus Young reflected on AC/DC's journey with clarity. In interviews, he dismissed the critics with his trademark humor. "We didn't need to reinvent the wheel, we just kept rolling it." For him, AC/DC's role was never about following musical fashions. It was about keeping rock and roll alive in its purest, rawest form. The aftermath of this philosophy is undeniable. AC/DC's body of work stands as one of the most consistent in music history, with an identity so strong that even casual listeners can recognize a song within seconds. Angus's schoolboy uniform, the pounding riffs, and the thunderous choruses became not cliches, but icons of rock culture. And for Angus himself, there was satisfaction in knowing they never betrayed their sound. While others twisted themselves to chase trends, AC/DC stood firm. The result wasn't stagnation, it was immortality. In the end, AC/DC's refusal to evolve didn't limit them, it immortalized them. Angus Young's decision to hold the line against changing trends turned AC/DC into one of the most enduring rock bands of all time. Their music may not surprise you, but it will always move you. Thanks for watching. Click here to check another video and make sure to subscribe to our channel.